A report by the Association of Macedonians in Poland. What Europe Has Forgotten, The Struggle of the Aegean Macedonians. Published in 1992 and reprinted in 1995. This report covers a topic that is never discussed. It was written by Macedonian child refugees that were displaced to Poland. This was during and after the end of the Greek Civil War. In order to understand the mass displacements that happened, which Macedonians refer to as the Exodus, at the end and during the Greek Civil War, you have to look back at earlier history and why this happened. Now, this report mentions, according to 1903 Polish statistical sources, more than 2 million Macedonians and only 71,000 Greeks lived on the territory of Macedonia, including Salonika. 2 Balkan wars were waged for the division of Macedonia in the years 1912 and 1913, and the wars ended in a peace treaty signed in Bucharest on the 10th of August 1913. Macedonia was divided among 3 warring parties. That was Bulgaria, Serbia and Greece, and this arrangement was later confirmed after the First World War at the Peace Conference in Paris in 1919. In the part belonging to Greece, that's Aegean Macedonia, the situation of Macedonians was and is the most tragic. Since the very outset in 1913, the Greek authorities have carried out a wide-ranging policy of discrimination and denationalization. They never recognized the existence of the Macedonian nation, its language, culture, and faith. Officially, they insist that Macedonians are Greeks and that Macedonia is a Greek territory, the so-called Northern Greece. Sometimes they call Macedonians Bulgarians, depending on the current trends in Greek politics. The Greek attitude to the Macedonian national minority attracted the attention of world public opinion, and on the 10th of August 1920 in Sèvres, near Paris, Britain, France, Italy and Japan concluded an agreement with Greece on the protection of non-Greek nations. Greece pledged full protection of the Macedonian national minority, its language and culture, and the opening of Macedonian schools. On the 4th of September 1925, in order to mislead the representatives of the League of Nations, Greek authorities and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs organized a special section for the observance of international agreements concerning national minorities. In that same year, the ABECEDAR was published in Athens. It was an elementary book for teaching the Macedonian language and was written in the Latin alphabet. It was designed for Macedonian children. However, it never reached them. After the departure of the representatives of the League of Nations, all the copies were destroyed. Despite the obligation, not a single Macedonian school was opened. In fact, the authorities laid special stress on the development of kindergartens in Macedonian localities in order to bring up children in a Greek spirit and in order to limit to a minimum the influence of parents. In order to justify their shameful and inhumane practices, the Greek authorities issued a number of legal acts infringing on the identity of the Macedonian nation. It should be noted that these acts violate the agreement they'd signed on the 10th of August in 1920. In November 1926, a legal act was issued on the change of Macedonian geographical names into the Greek versions. The news was published in the government daily Efemeris tis Kyverneseos, number 322, on the 21st of November 1926. The same newspaper, in its number 346, published the new official Greek names. The names of the people were changed too. First names as well as family names were changed to Greek versions, and these are still officially binding to this day. Here is a partial list of the Macedonians who became resident in Poland. You can see here their Macedonian names and what they were changed to in Greek, their year of birth, the Macedonian name for their place of birth and what it was changed to in Greek, and the year in which they were living in Greece. So Mito Aleksovsky became Dimitris Alexiou, and he was born in 1939 in Sestevo, which was changed to Sidirohori, and the last year in which he was living there was 1948. There are other examples too, and you can see that the years of birth go from 1917 onwards to 1944, and you can see from the much they were last living in Greece, they will go up until near the end of the Greek Civil War in 1949. From the late 20s up until the early 80s, a number of acts were passed and were used to discriminate against Macedonians. Some related to protecting public order and state security, and these were used to arrest, imprison and expel thousands of Macedonians. Other laws concerned citizenship, property and repatriation. These were used to remove the citizenship and confiscate the property of those who fled Greece. These were later updated to allow for Greeks to return, but excluded Macedonians by restricting the return to Greeks by origin. The nationality policy of the Greek government was aimed at exerting pressure on citizens of Macedonian origin to force them to leave their native homes and their motherland. Physical and psychological pressure was used. The pressure reached its peak during the 1946 to 1949 Greek Civil War, and between mid-1945 and the 20th of May 1947 alone, in Western Macedonia, 13,529 Macedonians were tortured, 3,215 were imprisoned, and 268 were executed without trial. In addition to this, 1,891 houses were burnt down and 1,553 were looted. 13,808 Macedonians were resettled by force. All of these facts were given by the headquarters of the Democratic Army of Greece. The Greek terror reached its peak in the first years after the end of the Civil War. Tens of thousands of Macedonians left Greece at that time, from 1949 to 1950. A sizable group of some 28,000 Macedonian children aged from 2 to 14 years were evacuated from Greece in the spring of 1948. These children were dispersed in various countries of East and Middle Europe and the rest of the world. Some of these refugees constitute the majority of members of the Association of Macedonians in Poland. Loss of citizenship left thousands of Macedonian refugees stateless. Greece also removed Macedonians who had their citizenship withdrawn from the population record and births book. Many of these Macedonian child refugees didn't know their date of birth because they were too young to remember. Attempts were made by Macedonians to use UN and EU mechanisms. Macedonians wrote to the UN about their status, to the Centre for Human Rights and to the European Parliament, relying on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other international law. The UN replied with a written response from Greece, rejecting the demand to return citizenship, only referencing the relevant acts excluding Macedonians from having their citizenship returned. The UN Centre for Human Rights could be of further assistance on the matter. In an open letter to the European Parliament in September 1988, Mito Aleksovski, who I mentioned earlier, wrote the following. The Greek authorities gave up to acknowledge the Greek citizenship of all Macedonians being on emigration, although many of us have never resigned of it, among others I. In the countries where we live, we're treated as stateless persons. In this connection, we are without any protection which all civilized countries render to their citizens in the country and abroad. We also have difficulties in finding a job, we have sometimes great difficulties to obtain visas, and we are not in a position to pay visits to the members of our families living in other countries. The international agreements concerning the touristic movement do not comprise us. The Greek authorities deny the existence of the Macedonian nation. Due to their anti-humanitarian policy, they've deprived the Macedonians who live abroad of the right to their Greek property and of the right to return. 4.5 months later, the European Parliament responded, saying that due to the rules of procedure, he could not raise a petition as a stateless person, and recommended finding a person with EU citizenship status to raise it on his behalf. In this way, thousands of Macedonians were forced into exile, having had their citizenship removed, been made stateless, and later had their visa rejected by Greece. For many Macedonians, the last memories of their family and living in their homeland was as they remembered it when they left during the Greek Civil War. We know of not a single Macedonian family in Greece which is not dispersed all over the world. Macedonians are staying in almost all European countries and in many countries outside of Europe, and the biggest number of Macedonian immigrants now live in the USA, Australia and Canada. Despite living in exile, many Macedonian refugees to Poland have stayed connected to their heritage. What's interesting is that the first Macedonian ambassador to Poland after Macedonia became an independent country in 1992 was Petre Nakowski. He was from Kostur in Aegean Macedonia, today's Kastoria, and he was a Macedonian refugee who arrived with a large group of children at a child centre in Poland in 1948. He has written numerous books that have been translated into English and are available to read online for free. It's important to end this video with the message that these events are not historic. They happened 78 years ago, and that's within living memory, and the challenges that Macedonians face in Aegean Macedonia and abroad continue to this very day. It's now our responsibility to decolonize and fight to end the Macedonian struggle.
Then they decided to go during the night so the airplanes can't see us. We were holding on to their dress, you know.
We reached Prespa, up on the hills and the mountains, and I could remember watching Lake Prespa. I was amazed seeing so much water. I've never seen so much water. And the sun was shining on the water. It was like a millions of meters floating in the air. I was amazed with that.
And from there, they sort of they split us up. Some kids in Romania, some kids in stay there, other kids in Hungary, the Czech Republic.
My brother and I were in Pollitecon. My father was in Australia. My grandfather and mother, they were back at the village. And my sister in Poland were in 5 countries.
Well, they told us that it only temporarily, after 2 or 3 months, we're going to come back.